McCloskey. I want to scream for the GOP. I want to sit with Dan Bongino. I want to show the American flag. Eggs behind the toilet in grandma's basement.
What's up, everyone? We are back for night 2 of the Republican National Convention 2020. My name is Matt Binder of Doomed. Oh, wait. So, say that again, Jared.
I am Jared Holt from Shitpost.
And that song is possibly my favorite song of at least the past day. It is amazing. That is Nick Lutzko, who used to do a lot of the funny stuff, the funny music stuff for Super Deluxe. You might be familiar with him for the what was it? The emo Trump video. That's my fave. That's where I know him from most. That's the thing. That's where most people would know him from. So yeah, Jared. You're watching on youtube.com/MattBinder. Feel free to drop in the live stream chat, super chat, and we will your questions, comments, and we will get to them during the show. Night 2, man. We're already like I feel like how I expect it to feel at the end of night 4.
Right. We are only halfway here, but we have 2 more shows to do after this. But this was a weird one. Like, night 2, and we'll get into this later, but it kind of left me with a weird feeling in my mouth. It's like this portrait of Trump that I just totally don't recognize from covering this for the last 4 years. But like I said, we'll get into this, soon enough. But in the meantime, I also want to be like Dan Bongino. That song is a banger. Props to Nick for that thing. It's so good.
It is. I feel like a part of me really would just like to talk about that song for the next hour. But alas, I think people are expecting a little more from us. But it was my take on tonight. Let's start with this. My take on tonight is that when you compare it to yesterday, I feel like the speeches were a little bit more dry. We didn't get the McCloskey, whatever they're. I can never gonna remember that last name. The gun couple. We didn't have Kimberly Guilfoyle with her rousing speech where echoing through the halls. We didn't get teary-eyed Don Jr. We got, honestly, a Tiffany Trump speech where I fell into a daze, to be quite frank. It took me about 20 minutes following the Tiffany Trump speech for me to snap out of this days. I just was so. It
was so potent, so intoxicating, so compelling that, Matt was sitting here.
Right.
We're texting back and forth. He's just like, you know what, man? I think I have to do it. I think I have to vote for Trump. And I was like,
Tiffany won me over.
Matt, listen to yourself, man. Come on, snap out of this. Snap out of this.
Right. Tiffany won me over. I saw that infectious smile of hers. All right, but okay. So then we get to the next Trump kid, Eric Trump, and I will say, I was touched by the end of his speech, which, to summarize for people who didn't watch, he did the usual, my dad did this and this and this, and will save America from the intolerant left. But then the end of the speech, it was a little bit like this: Dad, I miss you so much. Please come back home. Call me, please, Daddy. Why don't we talk anymore? It was like amazing to watch him actually say, I'm going to use these last moments to talk to my dad, because, he didn't say this next part, but frankly, he doesn't give me the time of day, so he's got no choice but to watch this.
Right. It's one of those things where it's like, in the fan fiction universe adjacent to Trump world, like, this is so funny, right? It like what he's doing is a rhetorical device, but in the broader like resistance lib narrative or whatever, that like portrays the Trump children as like just being like, Don Trump Jr. just being like, Dad, I love you so much. You have no idea. Like, please pick up the phone.
Right. But
It's so funny. So funny.
Speaking off of that, though, one thing that's really interesting, and I guess it does speak to that, basically, whether the kids don't know their dad, really, it seems like, or don't know him anymore. There's in those speeches from Tiffany and Eric, and yesterday with Don Jr., there is talk of Trump just like everybody else talks of Trump. He's some sort of iconic Americana president. He is a real American. He does this for the country and that for the country. Obviously, we'll insert whatever you'd like that's untrue because they are making shit up. But there's never any talk about Trump the dad, Trump the man. I mean, Eric almost went there in the end, but again, even then, it was mostly just, you are my dad. That's it. There's never like, like this is,
And I have a message to my father. You are my father.
Right. That's as personal as they get. There's never like, and I saw Ashley Feinberg tweet out how last time Tiffany spoke, she talked about the time her dad sent her a letter. That was her RNC speech in 2016. And I guess that got a little bit more to it. But again, I mean, if I was to talk about my dad on a platform, I would have some great personal stories that, obviously you have stories you wouldn't tell in public, but then there's stories that, are personal, but would make good stories to share. They don't seem to have any of those. I mean, receiving a letter from your dad isn't really a story. Telling your dad you miss him because he's the president of the United States and you don't see him anymore, that's not really a personal story. That's not really connecting someone in your dad's position with the common man, which is really the purpose of those stories when they tell them at these sorts of things. And
right.
If they were the type of, if they were some sort of like, rough and tumble family who didn't want to take part in these, these legacy type things that are expected of these hoity-toity high life people and people in power, that would be one thing. But we're talking about the Trump family. I mean, they need to do that sort of stuff, and I just feel like they don't have those stories to tell. They just, it's not that they don't want to, they just don't have them.
Right, exactly. I mean, there's just this, like, it just feels lacking, these personal anecdotes that they have for their father. Say what you will about, whatever the talking points are about the Trump administration's wins on policy or in cultural and social battlegrounds, which, have varying degrees of truth, that's the diplomatic way of saying that. But the personal anecdotes they offered up seemed lacking. It's kind of a stark contrast from the DNC last week. You had a few speakers talk about how Joe Biden has experienced deep personal loss in his life, the death of several close family members, and using that as kind of a leverage point to talk about Joe Biden's empathy, his sort of capacity to relate to people who are in tough spots.
Right.
And, regardless how you feel about that, that was kind of what was going on there. With the Trump kids, we're not getting a whole lot in that sort of vein. What we're seeing is kind of the opposite. To me, it almost felt like, you should like me because I am a Trump kid, and vote for my dad. You're going to do it anyway, type thing. That sort of seemed to be the subtext that came across to me from those speeches.
Right. And and whether you like Joe Biden or not, and everyone knows I've got my criticisms of Joe Biden. The stories of his life, especially those stories about the sad death of his wife and child, it speaks to just something human. Like, you feel empathy for someone going through that. And, there's a lot of things you certainly can't feel empathetic for people who are in certain, power and class, I'm sure. But the death of his wife and child is a really sad story, and it actually makes, I think, even people who are critical of Joe Biden, who can experience empathy, actually feel for him. It really does, work in terms of just trying to connect with someone on a human level.
Right. Anybody who has experienced significant loss of their family or loved ones will, hear those stories and be able to relate to them.
And the weird thing is, now that I think about it, the Trump family had a loss right now with Trump's brother. And listen, of course, Trump's brother dying in his not old, but older age is certainly not at all comparable to the loss of your wife and child. And, when your child was just a couple of years old, I believe, like Biden's daughter. But you think in this time when so many people are experiencing loss during the coronavirus pandemic, you would at least try to bring that up. And I think, what did Eric Trump? I think he mentioned, like, let's do it for Uncle Robert or something like that.
Yeah, Eric Trump. I think
it.
I've got the quote here. Was here it is. Dad, let's make Uncle Robert proud this week. Is it about what Eric Trump said?
Right. Now we don't know yet the cause of death with Trump's brother. I think there was speculation about the reason we don't know is that there's allegedly, this is all speculation, a COVID connection. But again, we don't know. But at the very least, you can say, we feel what the country is feeling right now with 170,000 people have lost their life. But then again, and that would also be admitting that the pandemic is still an active threat, where I believe over 1,200 people died just today. And this is like a daily occurrence now. But if you're watching the RNC, this is the thing in the past. It's over. The pandemic is done with, man. We've washed our hands of it. Trump saved the day.
Right. And we covered this yesterday. There is this sort of gaslighting going on with the coronavirus pandemic and the Trump administration's response to it. We saw that sort of repeated by some speakers tonight at the RNC. For example, Myron Lizer, I butcher names all the time on my show, and it's just the consequence of reading all my news instead of listening to it or seeing it.
It's all good, Jared.
So apologize to Myron. Fuck you.
It's all good, Jared Holt.
No, but he was speaking about sort of the COVID pandemic's effects on Native American communities and how Trump has supposedly stepped up to try to lessen that disparity. We're still seeing this rewriting of history, even on night 2 of the Trump administration's response to the pandemic, and all the consequences, aka death, that has followed since then.
Right. And I brought it up again today. Obviously, like you mentioned, it was a theme tonight as well, that you listen to these speeches and they're talking about it as if it's a thing of the past. But also I noticed, not to jump ahead because there's a lot more to talk about with Melania Trump, but with the media, what I noticed, and I saw, I believe it was Chris Cillizza, who always has the greatest takes. He, it wasn't Cillizza, it was David Brooks. Sorry, Cillizza. Although I'm sure I could just tuck that comment away for something else I'm sure you'll say later tonight. The media went sort of goo gaga over a portion of Melania Trump's speech where she, bare minimum here, basically admitted that 170 some odd thousand people have died. I mean, this is a low bar to be going like, wow, a real flashpoint of the night. Melania Trump reaching out to the families who lost loved ones during the coronavirus by actually admitting what the death toll is. Like,
Right. I mean, this is the same thing. Like, people who follow me on Twitter will know that I have a tiny Pomeranian puppy. But this would be like if, my dog went outside to pee instead of peeing on my carpet. And then the national media was like, an outstanding performance from Pierre tonight. It's like he's supposed to do that, man. Like this is the expectation. This is not like a feat of politics. This is the bare minimum.
Right.
And what we've seen repeatedly in national media, of course, some exceptions apply. There's plenty of great reporters out there, but it seems that major networks, at the very least, are applauding the Trump administration for just clearing the bare minimum and absolutely hammering every other politician when they have real catastrophic failures like the Trump administration does.
right. So another, we can come back to Melania Trump's speech in a little bit, because that was the headliner of the night. One thing that stuck out to me right off the bat, like I think it was something like 30 minutes into the show, the primetime show, was that Nicholas Sandman is his name, right? The Covington kid.
Yeah, again, I will say I read all my news, so I'm sure I'm
Right.
botching this in some way, but Nick Sandman is what I believe his name is pronounced.
I cannot believe how long he spoke for. I swear to you, he spoke longer than like the lieutenant governors, the senators like Rand Paul. It felt like he went on forever. And we'll get to the substance of what he said, but I just have to point out that they gave this kid's pre-taped video a long time.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like what I was saying last night during our coverage, which is that like the RNC, sure, it has some like prominent political figures, but all the sort of culture war figures that are weaved into this are people you would have never heard of unless you're just absolutely addicted to right-wing media. Nicholas Sandman, sure, he made a ton of headlines, national headlines. A ton of people saw that photo, but it is like the same thing that I was kind of talking about last night. If you vote in the midterms, you are among the most politically active people in this country. And if you follow political media on a day-to-day basis, like I'm thinking like if I walked into any sort of random establishment, a restaurant, a library, whatever, things I'm not doing now that COVID is happening. But if I just like walked up to any random stranger and I said, hey, do you know who Nicholas Sandman is? What is the likelihood that they are going to be like, oh, yeah, that guy? Like I live in DC, so it's probably different. But even by those standards, I would imagine that the likelihood is pretty low.
Right.
And the fact that he got such a generous portion of time compared to even people like Senator Rand Paul is kind of astonishing.
The thing about, I remember when that thing happened, and I didn't talk about it that day because something was, there wasn't enough out there.
Something was off.
Right, something was off, and if people can check my, I don't delete tweets, so people can check my feed, and I didn't mention anything about it because something was off about it, and I feel like sadly, I have a different critique of the media than he and the right does with this, but the media screwed up here and basically turned this kid into a right-wing icon. And he's using it to his advantage. And, they love this stuff. They love the fact that they just have these personalities. It's like a right-wing influencer industry. Like, you have your TikTok influencers that have agents now and, your YouTubers who are getting like TV talk shows. You have a viral moment where you're being conservative or right wing and boom, you're the next big right wing cause, really, because that's what he is. He's not just like a person. He's literally like a cause for them. represents something, and that's, I guess, why they gave him so much time, because he didn't really, I'm not going to attack some kid. I'm not going to go after him specifically, but the right use of him, I mean, we've seen what this turns into. I mean, this kid could possibly be the next Ben Shapiro.
I don't know if I would go that far. But I will say I agree. I do think that a lot of people in the national press jumped the gun on this story. It's kind of a symptom of the media environment we're in now, rather than like a condemnation of any individual reporter. This is a viral tweet, and we have to cover the viral tweet of the kid with the MAGA hat on and like this political flashpoint, right? And too many people rush to the story without trying to investigate sort of the circumstances around what was going on. That is certainly not to absolve Nick Sandman of any wrongdoing. I think, what the video shows is pretty clear as day. It's kind of, I think most people would see that and kind of get a weird feeling in their stomach of like feeling kind of like grossed out by what they're seeing. The smug kid with the MAGA hat, like smiling in the face of, a Native American protester. But it wasn't this like big nefarious thing that it seemed to be portrayed as or assumed to be. But so, I share, we have a mutual interest. I don't feel like really beating up on this kid too much, especially because he's so young.
Right.
I am not that old, but like even to me, I'm just like, that's a kid. Like
right.
that this kid fucked up pretty bad, and like he didn't learn from it. He became a hero, but like whatever. But I do think what he said was important. So Nick Sandman's purpose at the RNC, his message to people who were viewing it, was that he was the victim of the quote unquote fake news. He claimed that a quote war machine of mainstream media attacked him, kind of folding into narratives about how the mainstream media is essentially a weapon of the Democratic Party. That's a claim that Republicans have been putting out for more than a decade. And he alleged that the mainstream media has an anti-Christian, anti-Trump, anti-conservative agenda. And, that I think was the point of him speaking tonight. He was a clear example where the media, on one hand, it's like, don't believe your lying eyes, right? Like the video is upsetting, and people who were upset by it certainly were not in the wrong. But a lot of reporters did jump the gun, and this sort of screw up was exploited very deeply, very cynically by Republicans. And now this kid who, really should just kind of, in my opinion, like go back to trying to just live his life and, do whatever it is he's going to do, try, finish out college, do whatever. But
become the next Ben Shapiro.
But I mean, now he is like a weapon in the Republican tool chest. He talks about cancel culture. One of my favorite lines is like, I learned what this is called is cancel culture. And I was like, oh man, this guy definitely watches Dave Rubin.
Right.
For sure.
Right. Well, I mean, the idea that he got canceled is just, what did he get canceled from? I mean, it doesn't even work with him. Like he didn't have a job to lose. Nothing happened to him. People can call you out without you getting canceled. But let's move on from this one, because there's so much more to talk about. Oh, one of my favorite moments of the night, probably right after the Eric Trump dad moment, was Pam Bondi. Now, this isn't a moment this is not, I should say, a moment that everyone would have seen, because but it still works. But there was a visual if you were watching CNN, which was really great. And I don't know if they planned it this way, but so Pam Bondi, the former Florida AG, the one who didn't go after Trump with his university, and what was it? She, after deciding not to press charges, she received like a donation from the Trump campaign for her her own.
If I'm remembering correctly, the reporting was that prosecutors brought her a case against Trump that she declined to take after receiving a very generous campaign donation from Trump.
Right, right. So she's up there, and she's talking about Joe Biden and the nepotism of the Biden family with Hunter Biden and his role on the board of that Ukrainian company, where he basically got paid an obscene amount of money, to do basically not very much. And we could have our I certainly I don't think there's anything there in terms of the political scandal they think it is. I think you just have another case of the rich and powerful having connections to basically just get someone a job.
Right. How many times does it happen? The CEO of some company is just like, hey, my kid just graduated college. He needs a good job. And then some kid just comes in and takes like $250,000 job a year.
Right. Again, I'm not saying it's right. I have my problems with it. Trust me. I'm not no fan of what went down, but it's not the political scandal they think it is.
Exactly.
But there's a moment on CNN where she is really hitting Biden about nepotism. And she's doing this while right under her is a visual pictured lineup of the next few speakers. And the visual lineup is Tiffany Trump, Eric Trump, and Melania Trump. So, I mean, we all know that the Trump family is this is all a big money-making operation for them. I mean, literally all of Trump's children either work for A, the Trump family business, or B, the White House, because their father is the boss, President Trump. So, I mean, not really the family to be talking about nepotism.
Right. Yeah, exactly. It is so ironic to hear all this ranting about Hunter Biden, which, like you personally, I look at that and I think, it's kind of gross, but it's not something that's like super uncommon. And it's not like so nefarious and ridiculous. Like, at least to my knowledge, from what I've seen, no one's been able to connect this kind of icky, dad getting his son a job situation to any sort of major policy change or, regulation that's happening from the federal government. So it's not really a quid pro quo type situation. That is so almost laughable in the face of like Jared Kushner and Ivanka Trump profiting millions during the Trump administration. The fact that Trump is still profiting just an incredible amount of money, even from his lone hotel in Washington, D.C. Major corporations will come in and buy out space, and then lo and behold, a week or two later, some regulation falls in their favor. It is just kind of, I mean, the thing is, it's not like a totally invalid criticism, but it is being argued by people who really have no ground to stand on.
Right. So let's talk about who do you want to talk about now? Why don't you pick the next speech you want to get to? Because I've been sort of telling you what we're getting to.
So I think we should definitely talk about Melania Trump's speech.
All right, let's get to that because there's other stuff. Yeah, there's other stuff after this I want to get to, including a very specific person who was supposed to speak tonight but didn't.
Right. We can talk about some of the stuff that's been going on behind the scenes and kind of just the general tone of the night. But the headliner was Melania Trump. So I think 100% we have to talk about this. So Melania Trump is like on track to get a bunch of praise for an RNC speech that wasn't really like so remarkable just because the standard is so low with the Republican Party, it seems like. Melania talked a lot about, the sympathies that the Trump administration has for first responders, for people who have lost loved ones during the coronavirus pandemic. She says that Trump is fighting, will continue to fight until the very end, until this pandemic is totally gone. She talked a little bit about her Be Best anti-bullying campaign. She characterized racial unrest in this country as a harsh reality, and urged people to focus on the future. And, portrayed her husband as somebody who, despite, the supposed just, onslaught of attacks from media, from Democrats, continues to stay focused and get the job done. She said at one point that Trump was somebody who doesn't waste time playing politics.
It's very true.
And it's I don't know, me. Like we could pick apart Melania's speech, but really kind of where I was left by the end of the night was not recognizing at all this figure of Trump that was put forward.
Right. Of course we can't forget the main, her main cause, what she sort of built her entire first lady, run as, is this, fighter of cyberbullying with her Be Best campaign. While she's married to probably the most prolific cyberbully, there is. I mean, it's amazing to see the do as I say, not as I do type thing coming from this family and everyone really who speaks at the RNC. But this has been the ongoing theme, and we're just 2 days into it. Yeah, I mean, the idea that they did the speech, and first of all, when they cut to the speech, the first thing I noticed was that's a crowd out in the Rose Garden. I mean, there was no distancing, no masks. That was a crowd. And then, they have her walk down the halls, and I saw a lot of people bringing up, and this was another recurring theme of tonight especially. I didn't see this so much yesterday, but that was just the legalities of the usage of some of these government buildings and ceremonies that were being used to promote Trump's reelection campaign. I mean, the White House was used to set the stage for Melania Trump's speech. I'm not one to really take much, whenever I see like people online now going like, still to this day, like, I get why it's something to report. Obviously, we're talking about it now. But there's a certain type of person online who's like, that's in violation of the Hatch Act. And it's like, come on, don't you get it by now? Like, it doesn't matter.
All of this stuff is important to note.
Right.
If for anything, just the history books. We will look back on this era and be like, look, we had somebody in office who just absolutely did not give any respect for the rule of law. And that's important. That should be noted. That should be reported. And, God bless those reporters doing that work. But from a political stance, the field has changed so much. It almost kind of feels a little nerdy. It's like chasing after somebody down the hallway and being like, "Excuse me, sir, where's your hall pass?"
Right. Right. Like, listen, I'm not talking about those reporters who obviously want to, or even just anyone who just wants to mention that, oh, by the way, this is a violation of, I get that. In fact, I think that's important to point out for an entirely different, it's good for the history books, obviously, but for an entirely different reason, to showcase to everyone, and to me, this is the real point, just how, like, fragile this whole thing is. Like, we're like, the government's literally built on a house of cards. Like, not to make any reference to any Netflix shows, but, I mean, literally, we have a president who just decided, like, I don't want to follow that, and it's fine. It's just there's nothing that could be done. I mean, we've seen there's nothing that could be done. So, I mean, but the type of people who are all like astounded, and they're like, oh, there's gotta be some sort of repercussion for this one, the Hatch Act. It's like, come on, you like the first couple of months in 2017, I get it. But now, jump aboard the current day, the current situation. Let's, it is what it is. And we have to, but I will say though, the citizenship ceremony was, even I saw that, and I was like, I wasn't like, well, Hatch Act, but I was like, woo, they're really throwing it all out the window. That one took balls to do. Like that one was like the most in your face. Like that one was. Ooh, I don't even know how to describe that one.
Because it's one thing, you had all these interviews and videos filmed on White House grounds. You had a speech on the White House grounds from the RNC. That raises questions about the Hatch Act, whatever. But like, to have a naturalization ceremony, which is just like a function of the government, I'm trying to conjure up like a similar government function that's not going to be hyperbole. So forgive me if this is too extreme, but it's like having a video of like somebody delivering the mail, and then once they deliver the mail, they turn to the camera and they're like, Trump did this. It's
right.
like
right.
I don't know. Like this is just something the government is supposed to do, and to have this politicized is, at least from how I see it, like incredibly, at the very least, incredibly gross, and at the very worst, incredibly dangerous.
Right. I'm picturing my analogy would be like, they got to pick a new pope, and they're all all those bishops or whatever it is. I don't know if it's the cardinal, the bishop. I haven't been a good Catholic in very long. Whatever they're doing in that room, we finally get to be the fly in the wall and the peak, and the pope who actually wins over the rest of the popes just suddenly like has a few people arrive and he baptizes them right on the spot in front of them. And that's what wins them over. They do the smoke and up the chimney thing, and yeah. Like, that's the equivalent. To me, that's my analogous equivalent. That's not fair. We can't do that. You could baptize people on the spot there to win over the other bishops. That was really something else. It was. And then, of course, Pompeo literally taking a trip to Israel, seemingly just to record that video in Israel. I mean, I believe he's under investigation over that because there was no good reason for him to be in Israel. It's not like he's there and he's, what do you know? I just happened to be scheduled to meet with Bibi, and here I am in Israel. It's the same week as the RNC. No, it doesn't even seem like that's the case.
Right, and they apparently like filmed it with the potato, and like I don't know, man. I do like photo and video work on the side sometimes, less so now in this pandemic, but the videographer inside of me just died watching his speech. It was, I can't imagine flying like halfway across the globe, setting up a tripod and everything, and then just like totally, like missing the focus on Pompeo's face by like a solid 3 inches. This is like, we're getting very technical hours now, but right. That's what stood out to me as somebody who has their brain just totally melted.
And for all the nerds listening, I believe what Pompeo did is also in violation of the Hatch Act.
Matt, we're just going to have you running around Washington with like...
That's a violation of the Hatch Act!
So how are we doing on time? Actually. We've committed.
Oh, we got at least because we started late. We have about a little less than 20 minutes if we want to go the full hour, which I think we're gonna talk at least. Let me get to some questions and comments, and then there's definitely 2 more people I want to definitely talk about, and they're the ones who made the news before the convention. One spoke, one didn't, and I think they are best for last because they are remarkable people. In a way that is not... You know who I'm talking about, right? The 2 people I'm talking about?
I have an idea, but we'll save it. So, yeah, let's hit some questions and then sort of zoom out maybe. And then we can hit those last 2 speakers. And then if there's any more questions after that, we can hit those and then call it a night. How's that?
Right, sounds good. So if you're in the live stream, we're taking questions. I got a few here, but if you want to get yours in, now is the time. Just drop a super chat right in the live chat, and we'll get to them. Renee says, Trump the musical. I don't know what you're talking about, Renee, but okay. Samantha, melanoma, gotta go back to plagiarizing the next speech. Right. Did we mention that? That, would you
She
consider this
plagiarized like a Michelle Obama speech, right?
Right, that
that's
was in
what
2016. Yeah, she plagiarized. Well, her speechwriter did. I mean, Melania Trump isn't writing any of this. I mean,
Right.
Melania Trump is basically counting down the days, whether it be 70 days or whatever it is to the election, or 4 years and 70 days. But that's her countdown. Everything else, she's just along for the ride. And I have my speculation as to why, and I think everyone else has that same speculation. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you want to call this a step up, or maybe she should have just maybe she should have just stole more from Michelle Obama. I don't know. It was certainly a speech. I'm gonna assume that she's the reason why they went long, because her speaking style, and I'm not making fun of her, but her speaking style compared to everyone else who seems to be, speaking with a mission. Her speaking style just basically, I'm reading off this teleprompter screen and I'll get done when I get done. So
Right, and that's no knock against her. It's English is a second language, so she just speaks slower.
Right. And I'm not even, honestly, I'm talking more about my speculative reason than anything else, because I don't think her heart is really in it. But yeah, I mean, either that or the RNC found out what we were doing, Jared. They didn't know about our day one coverage. They caught our podcast upload late last night, early this morning, and they were like, well, we can't let this stand. We want them to be tired. So we're going to make sure we go a little bit long. Maybe it was all planned, actually. Melania, just, slow and steady with this speech, go a little bit over.
Yeah, no, I was looking at the clock, and every second past 11, I was just like, all right, let's go. All
right. Let's go to the next comment here. Eckham, or Eckham. I'm sorry, buddy. Why don't you let me know how to pronounce your name, and I'll get to it eventually. I think Tiffany is curious. She almost said something like, do your own research. Did she say something like that? Oh, she's the one who had that. She was the one who had her main thing in the speech was how, if you're someone who is open-minded and listens to what's being said and forms your own opinion and lets everyone share their thoughts, then this is the campaign and party for you. That was her whole shtick.
Right. She tried to make the argument that supporting Trump wasn't even an ideological thing. It was a principle thing.
Right.
I will say listen, I've covered QAnon for a long time, and by my own standards for reporting, I'm going to need to see a hell of a lot more than, a line in the speech.
I will need to see bare minimum hashtag WWG1WA in the Twitter profile. That's bare minimum for me. That's what I need to see. And when I see that, that's the guarantee. I mean, that's the QAnon promise.
On a personal level, just because it would be so funny to me. I really want to hope that Tiffany is Q. That I think that would come full circle. I could die happy after that. I just want Tiffany Trump to get on the mic and be like, Patriots, the storm is coming. Yeah, I think, I could probably retire after that.
Now, is it just me? And this isn't a knock on Tiffany, because this person who she reminds me of, I happen to think I like her sometimes. Tiffany Trump gives off some real strong Miley Cyrus vibes. I mean,
expand on that. That thought has never entered my head.
They have the same sort of demeanor and facial expressions, and obviously Miley Cyrus is not a Trump supporter. But something about the way their facial expressions, I get a real Miley Cyrus feel. But that's maybe a discussion for another day.
Night 4, just save it all for night 4. We can blow it out on night 4.
Right. Well, Eckham continues here. Let me. There's another super chat I want to get to, and then we'll get to Eckham's second part, because then we could segue from this. Bob with the super chat. Jared, did you notice the difference in camera work? Night 1 and 2. 1 was like an Oscars, sweeping panning. But tonight, almost no cuts during speeches. That is an interesting observation.
That is an interesting observation.
I don't know if I noticed that, actually. I'm trying to think. I'm going to have to go back and watch now, but that's a very interesting observation. Clearly, they felt like night 1 wasn't working then if they tried something different for night 2.
Right. I almost wonder if those images of like an empty auditorium during the speeches just like weren't resonating, or if some creative director thought that was a bad idea. I mean, now that I think about it, it certainly does seem like there was less wide shots, but I hadn't ever stopped to think about possible reasons that might be.
One thing I did notice, though, was there was a lot less, I guess you could call them on-location segments than the previous night. And by that, I mean, I feel like the majority of speakers tonight were in that weird room they set up with the American flags behind them, where they clearly were, they all went to this spot and took their turns speaking at the podium. Last night, I feel like there was a lot more speeches where someone grabbed the camera and shot themselves talking at home. I don't know if there was some sort of calculation there. I have no idea, or if that's just how the schedule worked out. But if you want to talk about production type happenings, that's the one thing I noticed. But I'm going to check out the camera work differences, because then to me that means they weren't happy with night 1 then. Let's go back to the second part of Eckham's super chat question. This is more of a comment, actually. I also heard they canceled a speaker who was into Q. Oh boy, did they cancel a speaker who was into Q. You want to explain here, Jared, what happened right before the convention went live? Literally, I think the news broke an hour before the convention, and they removed her from the schedule 30 minutes before the convention.
Right. And that individual is Mary Ann Mendoza. She is somebody, there are these figures called angel moms, and these are mothers who have had children killed by undocumented immigrants, who then leverage the death of their child into an anti-immigrant sort of bashing campaign. And I forget who it was, but somebody sort of called it out today. Like, in any other context or any other like demographic group, we'd call it what it is. If there was something called angel moms and it was like people whose children had been killed by Jews, like everyone would recognize that for like how bigoted and gross it was. So the Daily Beast reported that Marianne Mendoza had quote tweeted this like insane thread about fuck me, it's kind of hard to follow, honestly, but it cited like Protocols of Elder Zion, which is a fictitious anti-Semitic text. It's like the founding block of like so many anti-Semitic conspiracy theories.
The gist is, like something a couple of hundred years ago or whatever, I mean, from their point of view, it's like the main Jew called together a bunch of other Jews, and they had a secret meeting and like came up with these rules that would have them basically have control over, the usual things that these conspiracy theorists like to say the Jews control.
Right. So she quote tweeted a thread that mentioned that, and sort of rehashed conspiracy theories that have been kind of repopularized by the QAnon universe in regards to like child trafficking and that sort of thing. And quote tweeted it with something to the effect of like, "Oh, you guys need to check out this thread." The Daily Beast reporter Will Summer, love Will.
I'm sorry, when did you say she posted this? A few years ago? 10 years ago? 5 years ago?
I think it was pretty recent, actually.
I was queuing you up for a joke. It was this morning.
Oh shit! Are you kidding me? I thought. I will admit I didn't remember that offhand, but I thought maybe it would be like a week or two ago. But
it was a beautiful day. My speech to the RNC, gonna share this Jewish conspiracy. I really don't like these ideas. First of all, any attack on the New World Order to me. First of all, you can all right. You could get your shots in on Hulk Hogan. I won't defend him. But you leave Kevin Nash, Scott Hall, Macho Man Randy Savage, X-Pac, Kurt Hennig. There's a lot of NWO members, so I can really go on for a long time. And I'm not even getting to the Red and Black Wolfpack NWO.
This is all flying straight over my head.
For wrestling fans, there's a very well-known wrestling group known as the New World Order. And for someone who is both a wrestling fan and a consumer of conspiracy theories, oftentimes, it's I'm watching wrestling and I'm like, wait, what did they say? Or I'm reading a conspiracy theory and I'm like, whoa, a wrestling reference. I'm like, oh no, wait a minute, no, that's not. Yeah. So they actually took her off the RNC. They gave her the boot.
Right, and it's really disgusting to see Republicans engaged in this kind of cancel culture. It's ridiculous. You just signal boost like one disgusting anti-Semitic conspiracy theory, and all of a sudden you're not allowed to speak to the nation on behalf of the president. Ridiculous. Satire. I am being satirical here. For whatever Daily Caller intern wants to clip that. But
I was actually holding it in. I wanted you to completely get the dryness of that comment out, and but I hope they do clip it. It'll be fun.
Oh yeah, tons of fun.
It'll be fun for me. I mean, I saw you getting Michelle Malkin all riled up, and the first thing I thought of was, ooh, good way to promote tonight's live stream.
Let's get into these last two speakers, shall we? You had a couple in mind.
All right. Well, the one I want to get to, and to me, I've seen her name around, but I will say she is one of those. Every now and then, there's a name that just flies under my radar. I don't really know too much about them. Haven't really looked too much into them, and this person is one of them. And then that
Tiffany
person,
Trump.
Tiffany Trump, right? Just one thing I share with her father is that we often don't really think much of her and often forget she exists. But no, Abby Johnson.
Yeah.
I honestly was unfamiliar with her other than I've seen her name flying around on Twitter every now and then. But the two things I learned about her today, one is like, a lot of people were like, oh my God, but this is part of the course for the far religious right. The fringe here. The thing that I wasn't too surprised about was she believes that the only people should be able to vote are the head of household, meaning that women shouldn't be allowed to vote because traditionally the husband or the man is the head of household. And she literally said this on Twitter that her unpopular opinion is that only heads of household should vote. Basically the idea, I guess, is that the family gets together and makes a decision. They talk about who their vote should go to, their one vote should go to. And at the end of the day, the man in the house makes the final decision and casts that vote for the family. Really atrocious and disgusting and demeaning to literally, I don't know, I guess, anyone over the age of 18. And also, because this would affect kids who live in the house who are over the age of 18. But also disgusting to women who are who literally in most households, I guess, would not be able to vote under their traditional family guidelines. I'm sure that would also be passed with this head of household law. But the one that really shocked me, I guess, because they're all about family, and a lot of these people are all about their outrage is for the children, for my kids, my precious children. Is this woman has a video that's been, I'm not sure how long it's been out, that video, but she defends the police racially profiling, and she says that police officers would be smart to racially profile my biracial son.
Right.
And she goes on to say, and that is disgusting on its own, but here's the knockout punch here. She goes on to say that statistically, her biracial son is more likely to commit violence than her white children. I honestly, I think I would have a loss for words regardless, but especially as a dad to two kids who, by the way, are biracial children. I'm disgusted by it. I mean, I'm appalled you would say that about your kids. I can't imagine even bringing up my kids for a political ploy, let alone saying that about them. Like, Christ Almighty!
I do not bring up my personal life in a public capacity ever. I don't talk about my romantic partner. I don't talk about my family. And to do that and bring it up in the context of oh yeah, police should racially profile my son, they would be justified in doing that, is insane. Oftentimes we see in these Republican events, whether it is the RNC or CPAC or whatever it may be, it's not that these people hold views that are so out of line with the Republican base or just so abhorrent that they simply cannot appear. It just becomes a PR problem. So Marianne Mendoza became a PR problem. It's not that she wasn't already promoting this nativist racist sentiment against immigrants or anything like that. She had a bad tweet and it got reported on, and people got outraged and started asking them a ton of questions. And, the first rule of crisis PR is figure out what the eventual thing is going to have to wind up being and just get there as fast as possible.
Right. There's also the whole thing where Republicans, the right wing, has built up this whole thing as, there's good people of color and there's bad people of color. For example, the bad people of color are the illegal immigrants flooding in through our borders. But they don't really have an equivalent, I guess, for the Jewish people of that. You know what I mean? They can't be she was just talking about the bad Jews. They don't have something. They've never built up something like that. I don't know what else to say about that, really, other than that's just one out there explanation. But the whole thing is out there, to be quite frank.
Yeah, no doubt. All right, how are we doing on time now?
Oh, we are.
We got. Do we have any other questions or?
Let's see. I think we're good with the chat. No, we're good with the chat. Do you have anything you'd like to close out night 2 with?
So, I mentioned it at the beginning of this episode, but my takeaway from RNC night 2, RNC night 1 had all these weird dog whistles, kind of just weird claims about Trump that weren't true, this sort of rewriting of history about COVID. But tonight, presented at the RNC, was a Trump that is sympathetic to immigrants, that is sympathetic to minority communities, that is trying to do criminal justice reform, really cares about the black community and stuff. And it's just so out of step with all of his public rhetoric and his public policy that at the end of the night, it just felt really jarring for me. The portrait of Trump that was put forward by Republicans at this last night of the RNC does not match with the guy who is actually running our government. It is on one hand, maybe, I'm going to do the drill tweet and say you got to hand it to the RNC for being so slick in their presentation and sort of spinning of the Trump administration. But I'm super curious if people are going to, and I ended the episode last night with this, are people going to fall for this, right? This is a vision of Trump that simply is not based in reality.
Right. And I think that's been your big thing, actually. The idea that there's this fictional Trump they're basically talking about in these speeches that doesn't exist. For me, I guess the thing was the speeches were all very dry tonight compared to yesterday. Nothing really, but it was the surrounding events of the speeches, especially all the But I want to end it on this, actually, because this isn't something we really spoke about, and there's not much to get into here, but it speaks to, I think, what's going on outside in the world with the Black Lives Matter protest, especially in the wake of the shooting of yet another unarmed black man just a few days ago. They had the Kentucky Attorney General Daniel Cameron out there tonight to speak. And one of the lines he said, now this isn't verbatim, but one of the lines he said was something about how we will never turn a blind eye towards injustice. This is the guy who is going, like, he's the one, if he wanted to right now, he can arrest the police officers that shot and killed Breonna Taylor. He's the guy. He's the one. He's the Attorney General of Kentucky. So it's all talk with these guys, even where the areas where they claim they claim they are doing good, and Trump out there, talking about I can't get over the citizenship thing, my God. But like, even in the most simplest of acts, they double speak. They say
right.
what they're doing and they're not doing anything. And to me, when he said that, and just knowing that the decision to arrest these officers for killing a young black woman literally in bed, in her sleep, I'm just at a loss for words. And that's what I want to end on, because I want to make sure that people know that, because I don't know if people put two and two together. I mean, I saw people talking about it online, but people who are listening to this who might not be in the Twitter bubble, political bubble, I want people to know that the guy speaking out there tonight for Trump, who said that they will never turn a blind eye to injustice he's literally doing that. And arrest the police officers that killed Breonna Taylor. Really, that's what I'd like to end on. And Jared, always a pleasure. I've been having such a good time doing this with you, and we still have two more nights. Two more nights, man. Our brains can only liquefy further. Right. This is the it's a good thing that we combined and joined forces. Doomed and Shitpost basically created a Megatron to take on the RNC, because I think solo, I don't know if Doomed or Shitpost could do it, but together, we've got the power.
And that is the message we want to unite this country on.
Right.
Together.
Right.
We can come together.
Right. So once again, folks, subscribe to youtube.com/MattBinder, doomedpod.com for my podcast, and support the show financially if you'd like to, at patreon.com/MattBinder. Go ahead, Jared, get your plugs in.
So, you can listen to Shitpost on any major podcast distributor. We're on Spotify, iTunes, all that good stuff. If you want to get email alerts for new episodes of Shitpost, you can go to shtpost.substack.com. There you have the option of financially supporting the show, which is always appreciated. Subscriptions are $5 a month or $50 a year, I believe. If you want a little discount for the long-term support, we appreciate that, and that helps keep us going. All right.
We will see you all tomorrow, same place, same time, RNC Night 3. Who's talking tomorrow? We got Ivanka, right? And Pence, right? I think those two are going to be the headliners.
Oh, yeah, we got some heavy hitters. We've been dealing with kind of, the, lower tier speakers, Eric Trump, Tiffany Trump. We should be getting some big Trumps now.
All right. Yeah.
I couldn't do that with a straight face.
Looking forward to another night of violations to the Hatch Act. Take care, everyone. See you tomorrow.
All right. Have a good night.